Nerds, and welcome. I am ecstatic to finally be back on the show. I am joined by my wonderful co-hosts Eric, Clark, and James, who I will refer to as Bones for the entire of the episode. Um, and yeah, I'm so stoked to be back on the show. It has taken forever to finally get to a point where I can come back, and super excited to be here. I hope I hadn't missed too much other than us having a brand new co-host in my absence.
Yeah, no, with everything going on, it just was easier to recruit another.
Absolutely. Well, and Bones is highly talented. We've had him on the show before, one of our comic book experts. So I'm stoked to have you, Bones.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here.
All right.
Bones is my mat leave replacement. He even has the bookshelf and the glasses. He 100% showed
Perfect. I'm basically the same person.
I mean, honestly.
All
It's
right.
interchangeable.
Fantastic. Yeah. So the topics we have on hand tonight look very, very exciting for me. It's just a lot of stuff I actually didn't even know was going on. So very educational kind of night for me, catching me off guard.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on right now, especially like video game wise. It's always getting interesting, and of course, it has to do with the EU. They love to do stuff. Beautiful place, but they confuse me. Like one of the things they're trying to do is like interchangeable batteries. They're trying to make that mandatory. So like with your Switch and stuff like that, you'll be able to like take out. You should be able to replace the battery. They're trying to do things like that, and I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. So they're an interesting place.
I mean, I liked it when they did like every charging cable needs to be the same cable. I appreciate that as I look at my giant drawer of cables. Like I was like, yes, I can get behind this initiative.
Yeah, that's me too, right? Like, I didn't actually even learn that they were behind. I say they like it's the entirety of the EU, but I mean, I didn't even know that they were behind the I guess the Type C chargers that have come in on a lot of Apple devices recently, and they're trying to solidify everything down to one thing. Because let's face it, if many kind of video game companies started going a lot of proprietary, you need this add-on for this game, people wouldn't stand for it. So I don't know why we did for our phones. And as far as replaceable batteries go, I haven't heard anything about that either, but I actually think I'm kind of behind that.
Yeah, they were talking about it a while ago. I don't know like where it is like traction wise. Like I don't know if it's coming through or it's going to happen, but yeah, they want everything to have a replaceable battery. My only thing is it just leads to more problems, like in the sense of nothing will be sealed anymore, you know?
Yeah.
So like, how are you going to make like certain things like waterproof, like weather, stuff like that? And then on top of that, a lot of the people that want the replaceable battery so they can keep their product longer, they have to remember where you get batteries from. That's very important because you're going to be throwing out batteries to put new ones in.
That's a big kicker for me. Like I can definitely see the appeal on having like a rechargeable sub pack that you can swap in and out. And that's kind of the way I do a lot of my like video game controllers and stuff, is just the rechargeable battery packs. But battery disposal is a serious problem and issue, and so I can see that line of thinking right there for sure. But yeah, on a similar note, I guess let's go ahead and get open. Jimmy Bones has brought to my attention something I didn't even know was going on. I didn't know anything about it until it popped up in the topic discussion in the pre-show. And so we are going to talk about the Stop Killing Games initiative that is coming out of the EU. Is that correct?
Yeah, out of the EU. I mean, just to jump right into it, I'm like pretty much, I would say, against it as a whole, right?
Okay.
The idea is I think good, like it's good intentioned. They want to, look, there's a kitty.
Yeah, we need a cat cam.
Because they want to keep games around, to keep them from disappearing.
Okay.
Which sounds like a good idea, but I think that currently the way the law is written, it's just very like broad and could be applied to literally every live service game that exists.
The proposed law, you mean?
Yes, or the initiative rather, but.
So I know very, very little about this. I'm on their website now, and I'm kind of scanning as fast as I can. But in can you describe to me exactly what they're meaning by like keeping games around longer? Like, what's the actual push for?
So the idea would be that there is no end life to a game. If you can't take a game offline, it has to be playable, essentially single player. Like, it has to stay online. Either it has to have like a single player mode, or the servers have to stay up. People can, or you could give people access to creating private servers. Something like City of Heroes has done. Right, that game died. It was resurrected because they were like, here's the code to use to make private servers.
Yeah, City
But,
Heroes and City of Villains both. Yeah,
that's not really feasible for a lot of companies and a lot of games. And I think also opens up for kind of like for indie games. If they made a live service game, I think that's like dangerous with this, because you could see a situation where they are trying to monetize their game, and somebody else, they're trying to keep other people from monetizing their game also, right? So somebody could start their own private server, and they're trying to monetize it, and they could prevent that from happening. They say, hey, you can't do that. You can't monetize my game. But that same person could theoretically, and it's not outside of the realm of possibilities, use bots to downvote them and just essentially ruin their reputation on things like Steam. I mean, we've seen it happen already with games just getting like swarmed negative reviews from bots, right? And that could destroy an indie studio. EA, whatever, that's not really gonna matter to them in the long run. But for an indie studio, that could be very negative.
I didn't even think about that I could basically so in concept, you would have to give me the right to run my own server for the game. If I didn't want to pay money for your game anymore, I could just intentionally shut down your tiny studio, pay once for the game, and then...
Not only that, you could theoretically then turn around and monetize it yourself.
That's true.
And I think that would be able to do it completely legally now. So
yeah. Well, I know my stance on this from what you've described to me so far and what I've been reading on their website. I think I'm very much of a similar mind, and this touches on two main issues that I'm very passionate about and have been passionate about before on the show. And that's, first off, this is clearly very, very bad for indie companies. Any indie game developer, whether you're a dude in his garage or 3 college friends or 10 people trying to get off the ground, this could be devastating if put into place for the exact reasons that you already talked about. And secondly, it feels like it's coming from a place where somebody was a super fan of some game that had a server support service that ended up getting shut down. I think here recently, it wasn't too long ago, the Xbox 360 was officially like sunset. Like they took it offline. You won't be able to continue for much longer on an Xbox 360 as far as network access goes and the Xbox Live Support service. And so, hats off to anybody out there that still has a functioning 360. Respect. I've never been able to keep one alive that long. And secondly, this feels personal almost, right? Where they were upset that their game or their console no longer has live support. And for me, especially as somebody that very much supports the indie development scene, I hate this idea that if your game or your product is not perpetual, then it's a failure. I hate this idea that if things end, it's bad. And we see that even in my line of work, right? You see people that are forced to churn out books in a series, book after book after book, because they feel like if they don't have another book to write, then that series is a failure. And I'm really glad like Tolkien didn't take that approach, right? And I hate the fact that things ending is seen as a failure in the industry right now, and because that's simply not the case.
Well,
I mean,
no, go ahead.
I would say my thing with it, like in regards to like that, is just I just see it causing so many issues. Like I feel like you're gonna lose some creativity from people because of stuff like this. It's a lot more money is gonna have to be paid for stuff to keep it up. Like as much as like me especially, I'll only talk for me. As much as I shit on the game industry, like EA and stuff like that, generally speaking, like the gaming industry takes care of people to a point. Yes, they make a buck off you, but like if you look at it, like was it Redwall? Was it Red? I think it's Redwall. Like there's some game that came out, it didn't stay out for very long, and they're reimbursing people their money. Like, so there are like companies are smart enough to realize, even like especially the live service games, like you have to take care of people because you want them to come back for your next project. Like, okay, we built this shit, it doesn't work, but we'll give you your money back and then we'll try again. So, I mean, that's why I feel like this is just like, you can even see that like the hype isn't that big with it yet because they don't have a lot of people that have like signed the initiative yet. So usually like an initiative, it's going to work from what I've seen from randomly looking because I get bored and I like reading people. Whenever I've seen like the stuff like this, like if it doesn't hit like a large percentage of signatures in the very beginning, it'll die off. So I don't think this is going to go much further, but it is scary to think that they are entertaining it.
It's an interesting concept, but I think it's a very gray space, especially for like live service games. Like when we talked about it at the beginning, it's like, okay, you know, I buy a World of Warcraft expansion. I don't get access to that expansion unless I continuously pay my monthly subscription fee. So it's just like, how does that type of game navigate it? Where, because the argument is they are buying an asset that has no expiration date on it. So technically to them, they're buying an indefinite asset, so they should get to play it indefinitely, which to me is a very weird logic loop because nothing lasts forever. Like even my books and my manga will someday degrade, or I'll lose little Lego pieces. Like it's just naturally intrinsic, but to them, they're like, I should get to read this book over and over and over and over again indefinitely. And it's like, kinda. So I was like, as a developer, I would just slap an expiration date on my game.
Yeah, right.
Just say,
Well,
you know, game 10 years, may die, have a great time.
It's interesting to me when I look at this setup because of all the things to try to get a movement behind and try to make real change in the gaming industry for, they chose this. And not the blatant cash grabs in the industry, not the terrible support or the bad microtransactions or any of the predatory processes that some companies in the industry have. They decide to go after server support.
But
and
does
they
this
do have. Sorry, go ahead.
does this come off the tail end of like, didn't Nintendo recently like shut down some kind of store? Somebody just shut down a store where you lost access to all of the games that you bought.
Oh, interesting.
I do know what you're talking about. They bought out somebody else bought out another company, and then they closed their store.
Or was I thinking of anime? Maybe like if
maybe
Funimation.
that was,
I think it was like maybe
Funimation. That's what. That's
and
what I'm
like
thinking about.
if you bought anime on
Funimation,
you
no
lost
longer have
access to it.
Yep.
That I could see being real upsetty spaghetti about, because that's like I buy a DVD. But I feel like a gaming platform did it recently too.
I think that there is like some instances where I think this like would be good, like for games I brought up with Eric earlier, this Kill the Suicide Squad or whatever that fucking atrocious game was that came out. That was a live service single player game.
Yeah.
Live service single player.
Yes,
it's
always online single player.
Squad.
And they want to make that. They want to make a similar game for the Hogwarts sequel that they're making. They want to make it also a live service
as a single player.
Yes, as a single player game.
Why do you need a single player game to be? Well, I guess it would allow you to do instant. It would allow you to make smaller instant patches, but like feels weird and expensive.
Here's the thing. As somebody, I can speak to this as a personal deal recently. So as I'm sure it's been talked about on the show, and I've seen Travis bring up several times in previous episodes, I haven't been on the show because of a bizarre series of basically every natural disaster but a tsunami that hit my little village. And so we've had fires, we've had floods, we've had earthquakes, we have a lot of really bad shit hitting my town right now. And through most of that, I haven't had internet access. Now, to my company's credit, where I get my internet access from, they have been really working to get me set up and get everything back to going. And I've had a lot of members of the village move to Starlink, which seems to have been a fairly popular choice once you get past the initial astronomical cost of the equipment. But one thing I've definitely noticed is that on any of my modern stuff...
Oh, there goes that sweet internet he was just bragging about.
Lovely. Okay, cool.
He's back. You're back.
Oh, fantastic. So one thing I've noticed, that was poignantly timed. I don't have any of my Xbox games or any games in general aside from a couple on my PC that I can run without internet. A lot of these games are not online in any way. It's a single-player game. The only thing it connects to the internet for is perhaps sharing scores to leaderboards. But a lot of those don't even have that. And it drives me nuts that I don't have games that I can play without internet. I think that's ridiculous.
There has been a movement back to physical disc games because of this.
Well, and even if the physical disc game, I'm going to make a movement for reducing plastics as much as possible. But I do think that buying should be owning. And so if I've downloaded the game onto my system, I should be able to play that game. If it needs internet access, things like, if multiplayer games or games that are explicitly, I'm not going to go on and try to play like Overwatch or Apex or something like that without internet, right? Obviously. I'm not playing Call of Duty by myself. But single player games like Dredge, like even No Man's Sky, I play single player. And you can play that one multiplayer, but it's a wonderful experience even by yourself. And I think if I'm allowed to download a game, I should be able to play that game with or without internet access. Perhaps that's the old fogey in me, but buying should be owning. And right now, especially on consoles, I'm starting to open my eyes to a lot of facts that people are getting away with some bizarre stuff. Most notably for the Xbox and for consoles and for that kind of thing, where they're designing them, effectively to break down. And then I have to pay for the internet access, and then I have to pay for Xbox Live, and I don't actually have a PlayStation, so I don't know how PSN works, but paying for the privilege of using the device I paid money for seems greedy. And it's something that's been going on forever and ever and ever. And now I'm sitting here where I don't have internet. Nothing can get updated. Nothing can get changed. I'm completely disconnected. And my unit will turn on. It will boot up. But those games that I have downloaded to my station can't check, I guess, a digital rights media, DRM, to allow me to play it.
Yeah, and they also probably have to have like live downloads and live support because they're constantly monitored for bugs and all that kind of stuff.
And
wow.
I just don't have video games that I can play. And you combine that with the fact that there are people, and I have a couple friends here in my village that this has happened to, that you start buying things digitally, right? Whether you're getting it from Amazon Prime stuff or you purchase something from a streaming service to own, things like Vudu or Fandango or any of those kind of things. If they take that off of their servers, you don't own it anymore. And I'm very much behind the saying of if buying's not owning, then pirating's not stealing.
Is Fandango still a thing?
Yeah.
I believe Fandango was actually purchased by Vudu, so...
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just like...
I'm covering a lot of ground right there. But yeah, and so with this kind of movement where it's like, oh, we're tired of servers getting shut down, my gray bearded ass is sitting back like this is the hill we want to fight over? This is where we want to die? Because there's some other things I'd like addressed way before this.
You just do like I do. Keep your Super Nintendo, your Nintendo, your N64, and still collect games at flea markets.
So what's funny is I actually have a Sega Genesis that I play with my children that I'm constantly buying cartridges for every time I find them at any retro store or flea market, anything. And so yeah, that Sega Genesis has been beat up and has been running for over 20 years now. That's almost 30 years now. Good grief.
There's a local guy here who replaces parts for the older system. So like I just have both my Nintendo, all the pins replaced. So that way both of my Nintendos will run and I can play the shit out of some games.
I suppose that's not too crazy because they're pretty simple systems, relatively speaking.
Well, I can definitely understand the push for retro gaming with a lot of the problems that we have in the industry right now. And a lot of these problems aren't even necessarily like the developers' problems. Now, yeah, a few of them are. There's some development companies out there that are not my favorite, not to name any names. And not that I'm still upset about Mass Effect, but
college football.
But yeah, there's some serious predatory practice in the game industry right now. But this is fundamental. This is a problem with like the creation of the consoles and the massive manipulation of what they can get away with within the console environment, right? Because there's realistically no reason in my mind, unless I'm missing something, and I'm not super educated on the subject, I guess, but why do I pay for Xbox Live? Like, why is that a part of everything?
It's not a part of everything. The reason that you pay for Xbox Live is you are accessing the servers that allow you to connect to other players in certain games. Like a lot of them are saying like, okay, to play this multiplayer game, you have to have Xbox Live. You're paying for that additional server setup. The big issue now is that while the gaming systems, no game is truly pushing the gaming systems to their capacity in terms of like performance. The games themselves are still freaking massive, and to make them as quickly as we need to get them out into the market, we can't, like, optimization is typically not there. So like, yes, I would love to tell you that the game is 100% downloaded on your PlayStation or Xbox, but it would need terabytes of storage to just, so that's why it's like, in the old Halo days, your load screen, they would actually close down they would actually like shut off your Xbox during the load screen, refresh it at the new instance to try and cache the data faster. So they're just huge games. So it's like, you want better graphics, cool, but you're not going to get it on your PlayStation.
Just got a farm of memory banks going out into my backyard, right?
You can.
Well, and that kind of speaks to the other side of it, right? And that's the unreasonable expectations of a lot of the consumer base, because that's something I also think should be attacked.
Did you just say that your expectations were unreasonable?
I think a lot of consumers, when it comes to video games, their expectations are unreasonable, primarily in production, like dates and timelines. I think the rush on creating content comes from both a unrealistic consumer base and an unrealistic administration that want to churn out everything as fast as possible. And, give me more games. I want, my downloading of Skyrim for my smart fridge right now.
It's also hard because, like, so the reason that like dev teams want a ton of time is for creative, which is awesome, which is cool. The reason that establishments need certain windows is, let's say you have an idea for this groundbreaking game. You're not probably alone. You have a finite number of months or years to get that game into the market before that game becomes irrelevant, before you let your like devs spin on like, they make cool stuff, but it's just like, I need you guys to make the game and then we can add in the cool shit. But like, I've seen it, and even in other industries, like people will just get stuck on the cool stuff and like never make, you get stuck on dessert and you never make dinner. So therefore you don't eat, is kind of like the way I go. So like, but also to your point, a lot of consumers are like, I want the next Baldur's Gate 4. I want everything in it, all of it, and I want it for $20. And then you're sitting there like, I have no idea how to make this.
Yeah.
How do we market it for $20, right?
Actually, nobody's thinking about how long like Baldur's Gate 3 even took to make. Like, and that was like a labor of love from these people.
And they had to do they did early access beta so that they could finish making it, because they needed the money to finish making it. So it's like, that it's a rough spot to be in, but like games are just, and I think the old head of SIE had an article where it's like, we keep coming out with these massive, expansive games and stuff like that, but in reality, and I do this all the time, I buy a game and I only play 30% of it. So there's a very small majority of people who are 100%ing their games. Like I think if you look on Steam, most people have like 45% of a game completed. So then does it make more sense to make a smaller game that has a more fun replayable loop than these massive expansive universes? I thought that was just like an interesting concept because I was like, oh shit, I'm one of those people. I have so many games that are just like 45% and then I just tootle on to the next thing. It's like, yeah, I never got to see that game. I don't know the ending of it. I watch a little YouTube video of the ending and I call it a day. I'm like, I've completed this game. Thank you.
When that new Elden Ring DLC dropped, there's like some statistics on it, and like 60% of the people couldn't access it yet because they hadn't been far enough in the game.
Right.
Because you had to like beat the one boss, and I was like, I'm never gonna get to see this DLC. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just reading an article the other day that apparently there's an ending in Baldur's Gate 3 that is for one of the heroic path. I don't know what that means. I still haven't been able to play the game. But one of the heroic path characters or the pre-built characters that is so difficult to achieve that only 34 players have actually found it. And I find that wild.
Yeah.
And so what's funny
like
is
it's a
you're
cool
talking about
Easter
that.
egg.
I think that there are a lot of games that will fall into the brackets that you're talking about that are well outside of a completion ratio, right? And so, for example, me and my buds, we play Destiny. And I love Destiny 2. I think it's a great game, but I can't stand Crucible. Like, I just do not play that game mode. So there's a whole host of, like, triumphs and achievements and, stuff for that game mode that I just don't have and won't touch. That's because I find the game mode isn't my favorite. I don't think it makes the game worse. And for the people that do play Crucible, fantastic, more power to you. Not really my jam. And I think a lot of games that did for a while try to cover that base where they're an everything game. They're kind of a catch everything. Here recently we've seen the indie producers take the opposite direction, and you're getting a lot of these little micro experience games that are 2 hours long, that are half an hour long.
Stray was fantastic. I think it was maybe a 16-hour playthrough game. I was like, perfect. Yeah. I can do this in a weekend. As an adult, I can do this. I don't have to come back and remember the controls. I am just an adorable little cat with a cyber pack. Yeah.
My daughter, on the same token, just played one called Big City Little Kitty. Yes. That was fantastic.
Did she knock pots off of the...
That's absolutely. And so these are great games. And then you have the ones that are a really good, simple gameplay loop. And you find things like Content Warning or Lethal Company that are fantastic games and do really, really well off of a basic gameplay loop. And I think those are fine. Not every game needs to be that we are the end-all, beat-all, everybody can play our game and have something. These are meant for a particular audience, and I think that's okay.
Yeah.
What they said.
What they said.
All right,
Ditto.
so we'll keep it moving. We'll get into a little bit of anime at this point.
Anime news.
One of the saddest seasons ever is happening right now due to the fact that a lot of shows are ending.
We're having a lot of wrap-ups happening right now?
Yeah.
This year, there's a lot of them. I don't even remember. Like, I know I was crying on the inside because my body doesn't know how to cry anymore. So
just too manly for that. You big manly man, you.
Yeah, it's probably a lot of mental health issues that prevent me from crying, but that's okay. But like My Hero Academia is done now. Is
One Piece will be ending.
Yeah,
the
One
manga
Piece
will be. I don't know how fast the anime will be quickly to follow suit.
And then JJK is too.
JJK.
Oh, Jujutsu Kaisen's wrapping up?
The manga will be wrapping up. The anime, I think, probably still has another 2 or 3 seasons in it, depending on how they do the pacing. Yeah, it's like all the big ones. And it's like what comes after and takes their place will be very interesting.
Right. Well, and I'm going to hold to what I said earlier about the video games. I don't think ending is a bad thing. Perpetual is an unsustainable model, and it's not a failure to end. And I hope a lot of them can stick the landing, because that's an incredibly difficult thing to wrap up a crazy anime or manga empire like that. Like One Piece, how do you end One Piece? That's wild to think about.
It's got to be the
and-
friends they made along the way. It cannot
yeah,
be
naturally.
I am convinced it cannot be a soul item.
No, you know
Luffy dies at the end.
he's gonna wake up from a head injury and it was all a dream. He
Yeah,
just works in an
something
office
dumb
building
like
in
that.
Seattle. Like, but no, I'm glad to see a lot of them are finally getting their feet under them and ending. But I am, that's wild to think about what's going to take their place, because that's a wild vacuum to try to fill.
You got a couple going right now, like Solo Leveling's got a couple more seasons that are still.
But to me, Solo Leveling's ended, except for with I don't know why I want to pronounce this weirdly, but Ragnarok. Like, to me, Solo Leveling is truly done. If you wanted to, you could go read the ending.
Yeah, I
like
guess,
online. Whereas like One Piece, My Hero Academia, and JJK, their mangas are ending. So that to me is more the finality of it. Like, okay, we know the ending now. Whereas like Solo Leveling, we knew the ending when the season started. And by we, I mean people who have read it.
Fair enough.
Nobody else.
And then Tower of God. That one's still kicking around. It's pretty good.
God, I think that's like 630 chapters, something insane.
So, and Dragon Ball Z's got a new one coming out. I don't think that's finished.
That will never die.
Aren't any of these
not
ones
Dragon
that
Ball Z,
are
Dragon Ball Dama,
Super?
Dega? No, it's another name now.
Dragon Ball Triple X.
Yeah, Dragon Ball After Dark.
Yeah.
I see James like laughing. Like, you know what it's called? The new Dragon Ball show?
I have no idea.
Return of the Dragon Ball.
Do y'all think any of the ones that are getting ready to wrap up are going to do kind of what Dragon Ball did and have the offshoot spin-offs, multiple versions?
I think My Hero might.
I hope not. Let them go.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it should be done, but I think I've been reading like in regards to like My Hero that they're looking at spin-offs.
You know what's funny? You bring up My Hero. Now I've not even gotten close to finishing that one. It's one that's definitely on my list. Bones brought up City of Heroes earlier as far as the computer game went, and one of my favorite things about that is they also had Cities of Villains. I think I'd be interested in watching an anime on the villain side of My Hero Academia. Get to watch some uprising of some villains and how they came about.
The villain side, but once you see the villain side, like then they're the hero. It gets weird.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Let's see how many people are morally gray and only followed the hot ones. As Clark points to the books behind her.
Gestures behind me for morally gray, the hot one.
Yeah, if they're attractive, they're not evil. They're just misunderstood. That's the rule, right?
I mean,
but no, okay. So we got a lot of stuff wrapping up. That's quite interesting.
But I'm excited to see what takes their place. Like, I have some bets, but like, I don't know. I'm just hoping Gege doesn't. I don't know how they are going to end JJK. I don't think they know how they're going to end JJK.
I think that show's like definitely been like
the show
or the manga, but it's just like a roller coaster, and like they're just figuring out as they go. They're like, this would be kind of fucking cool. And, like,
basically, they're just like, who does the internet like?
Yeah,
dead. It's just, I feel like they just want to inflict emotional trauma at this point, and they're doing a great job.
They built the fucking statue for what's his name, and how many episodes was he in? Like 7? Not Gojo, the other guy. And I should know his name, the blonde that died in it.
He got Naname?
Yes, Naname.
How
he built a fucking statue.
Dare
he did 6 episodes.
Talk shit about Daddy Naname.
Oh, for those of you that haven't watched, spoiler alert post-mortem.
No, I think it's a real statue. Like, it is.
No, they did. They built the fucking statue for the guy.
I think there's one of Gojo in the train station, in like the Shibuya train station or something like that.
Oh man, it's wild, dude. How much like this show is grown and done things outside of just the show for being so short and new, like huge impacts, and it's wild.
Yeah, I will say it came on quite swiftly, but I think the animation really helped it along.
Yeah. They did a good job animating a lot of the fight scenes and stuff were pretty phenomenal.
Like, I think it's animation, I will die on this hill, is what's carrying Demon Slayer past the Swordsman Village.
No,
yeah, you'd brought that up in a previous episode about anime, and I I can't disagree with you on any point. I find it enjoyable, but a large part of that's because it's well animated.
Like it. It's a great
Yeah, 'cause-
show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's
I like
well animated.
Yeah, because the action looks good. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there is something to be said about certain things that are simple, right? So I have authors that I read that are some of my favorite authors of all time, and I read them because their stories are relatively simple, they're easy to digest, and frankly, they're predictable in a way that's like, you know, the good guys are going to win. You just don't know how. So, and so Joshua Dalzell, I hope he listens to the show because I'm going to shout you out like crazy. Joshua Dalzell writes several series that I enjoy. Black Fleet, Scout Fleet, and the Omega Force, and they're all kind of that stereotypical like action flick style of book where you have Soldier Man's boys, they fight the bad guy, they were friends the whole time, so they won.
I call
kind of
those
thing, right?
palate
And
cleanser books because they're the ones that I
yeah,
read in between, like the Jim Butcher, like Dresden Files, right? Like you just pick that up and read it in between something more serious.
yeah, absolutely. And I love those little books. They're great. They're 450 pages of I don't have to worry about anything right now. And now I'll pick up the next big one and be like, okay, cool, here we go. And so I think that it's perfectly fine to have an anime like in a similar position. Because you look at Demon Slayer, the story is not convoluted. It is not complicated. The
I think
motivations are not complicated.
towards the end, you realize that they just want to finish it. So a lot of the complexity that you saw in the beginning, and a lot of like those details that you saw in the beginning when you're introduced to the Hashira and when you're introduced to like the demon villains and stuff like that, just fucking disappears. And then also you start to realize like, and I also had the issue with JJK where it's just like people who are presented as ultra powerful, just their powers all of a sudden just seem to get muted. Like, in my personal opinion, spoilers, Naname should not have gone down the way he did based on my understanding of his powers in previous fights. Like, it seemed like a weird place and a weird fight for him to go down in.
Yeah, I
So it
feel
was
you
just
on
like
that.
fearless.
And a lot of descriptions that they have on the way powers work in a lot of these animes, they try to make them sound as intimidating and like terrible as possible when you're fighting the bad guy. And so, you know, you walk up and you domain expansion on somebody, you know what you're walking into. But then when they're fighting on the hero side of the team, they have a harder time with that. We call it unlock syndrome around my house, where it's like, man, this was such a hard boss. And now that I beat him, he'll be on my team, and he sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been doing that for a long time though. Like where, like anytime, like something like, especially like bad guy becomes good guy, they all of a sudden are not as oomph as they were initially. It's something I've expected, and in anime, it's been like that for forever. Like look at Dragon Ball and then Dragon Ball Z. Like Goku's this almighty being, but like every time some new bad guy shows up, all of a sudden he's like this minute, powerful being, and he meets new bad guys all the time, and it's like it's wild to me. But yeah, I mean they do it, so it's to me it's to be expected in anime. I expect the main guy to be super uber as he destroys the new bad guy he's fighting, and then once he hits the next bad guy, he's back to the beginning again and has to train like there's no tomorrow to beat the shit out of the new bad guy who's uber powerful.
Yeah, when you give me a very description, like when you give me a very detailed description of how their powers work, and then like they don't use their powers to the fullest of that description, then I'm just like, did he forget how to use them? Because
I mean,
like the way Naname's sword works, like that's a really, and Gege explains their powers in great detail, like in the manga. So it's just like there's no confusion. They explain the science behind it. So I'm just like, okay, did he just forget? Or like,
his body was half burnt off, basically, and then
yeah, but he shouldn't have gotten to that point.
And he was tired.
Oh,
I mean,
he's
look how long
tired.
he was fighting, and he was in
He's
that
so
domain
tired.
expansion forever, fighting that fucking crazy creature. Which, by the way, when Old Boy's dad comes in, that was one of the coolest things ever. He comes through the water, and then he just fucking mangles that guy.
Oh yeah.
What was it, Daemon or whatever?
Well, and a lot of this stuff
so
gets a little bit
good.
weird. And so the other day on the Crossing the Nerdverse Facebook, I got tagged in a post. Eric, I think you sent it my way, and it's a dude talking about the use of Mage Hand spell in D&D, right?
I use that way too much.
Well, here's the thing. Eric
An
asked me how would I
inappropriate
handle.
amount of Mage Hand.
Yeah. Eric asked me how do I handle that in my games. And here's the basic breakdown, and I think it applies to a lot of the anime we're talking about, right? And there's whole tiers about how you handle the Mage Hand question, but ultimately, Mage Hand works in a couple of different ways, and dominantly it has to be on an object, so we're going to call a human heart that's in use an object, that's not being carried or worn. And so you're also going to tell me you're not carrying or wearing your heart. And then it's very bold of you to assume that in my universe, your heart functions the way that it does at all, or that beings even have a heart, or that they follow any laws of biology that you understand, because it's not our physics system. Falling damage shows that. And so even if I allowed you to do it, flicker away at the heart, I might allow it to cause some kind of penalty or condition that lasts around. But the physics system, the way the science works in the game, doesn't like that, because you will not find a rule anywhere in the game that says, yes, every being has a heart, that heart pumps their blood, and if the heart is damaged, they die. No. Like, it's not there.
How do you handle freeze water?
Depends on the situation.
Oh, I always go for if they're cut and I can see their blood, I can freeze all of the water.
So I've handled that in several different ways. It's a very popular tactic in my 5th edition game. To do some kind of, one of my players has a decanter of endless water, and they love doing the whole, because I did make a house rule many moons ago about how, like, you can freeze some water with an ice damage spell, right? So if you flick an ice knife at something, it does, ice or cold damage. It can freeze water. It was a great cinematic thing at the time, and so that's a favorite trick now. And so I do like using things where it's like, I'm going to reward my players for making an environmental hazard by flash freezing a puddle of water or whatever, right? That's a lot of fun. But the physics, again, don't behave like our physics do. Most notably, the fact that cold is a manipulatable force instead of just extracting the heat out of something. Cold is its own energy thing that defies all laws of physics. And so, perfect example. They're fighting effectively a stone golem, right? It's called a stone warrior. It's a big stone statue, blah, 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 blah. And one of my players used stone walk, stone meld, stone pass wall, something like that, where they can walk through stone. Grappled the creature, stonewalled into it, opened their decanter of endless water within the stone creature, let it go, and ran away. And then when the water started pouring out from any damage or whatever, they wanted to freeze it to try to make the water expand and bust this creature apart. Which, fantastic. I gave lots of good bonuses for that tactic, but didn't outright kill the golem because it's not the way the physics work. And so, yeah, a lot of those questions
That's because you're a mean DM and you don't want us to have any fun.
Yeah. They've also got some great one-shots that, again, never made any sense. But I digress. I think a lot of anime has the same kind of thing, right? Their physics system obviously doesn't work like our physics system. There are some pretty key differences. And I think a lot of
minor details.
Yeah, minor details. And that's why I laughed when you were like,
Saiyan.
"Oh, they explained the science behind it," and I went, "Yeah, science."
I'll be Super Saiyan eventually. It'll happen.
Don't get me wrong,
I'll shit my pants.
I'm sure there are examples out there that tried to be as kind of hard sci-fi, hard fantasy as they could be, and follow all the good rules of physics and blah blah blah.
I mean, it doesn't matter though if they follow the rules of physics as we know them. It matters if they follow the rules of physics as they've defined them, or the rules of whatever. Like
exactly.
Brandon Sanderson, for example, has been really good about writing these books with very hard, like, this is what you have to do and this is how this power works. Yep. So I kind of do agree with Clark on that. Like, his death was kind of weird to me as well.
Yeah. Now, all of that is on the preference that the specific death we were talking about don't know anything about. To be fair, but I was basing it off of an idea of like you were talking about a sword and the way that a sword works.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately went to I just dropped his name. Cool, the dude with the big cross sword in One Piece
Oh,
that can like
Vampire.
cut ships in half.
Vampire.
You're not helping me. Draco, not Draco Malfoy. Oh my God. Mihawk. Mihawk.
Yeah.
I can't remember his full name right now. Oh my God.
That's super impressive to watch him like pull out his sword and cut the air hard enough to like blow a ship apart.
I mean,
I'm like,
One Piece is a terrible example because there are no laws.
There are no laws. One of my very favorites about there being no laws in One Piece is a scene. They just did an homage to it on the Olympics, where the main dude like bites his thumb and then inflates his hand, like by blowing into it or whatever. And I'm just like, what?
He's made of rubber.
Yeah, but it's still a wild thing to do in any regard, because how does that make it better?
It makes it bigger, and because he's inflated it with air, now it's somehow hard. And then he hardens it again with his hockey.
Yeah. This is the way. I feel you.
It all makes sense.
It all comes back around. But no, and I think that Bones, that is exactly right. If they follow the rules that they themselves have set down, even if that rule is One Piece's there are no rules, I'm happy. And consistency is good. That consistency, I think, is what we're talking about lacking, right? Where it's like, oh man, you were such a cool boss. Why do you suck now that you're on my team? Like, domain expansion is not nearly as cool when I use it. So yeah, that's kind of where I land on that.
All right, we got one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
Bones, if you want to start us off with the whole AI thing.
Yeah, well,
so
this was brought to my attention, I think, through some YouTube channel or another. Probably, I watch a lot of YouTube while I work. But apparently, despite their promises to veer away from the use of AI, Hasbro has now posted job postings for WotC, for Wizards of the Coast, specifically for AI engineers. And in particular, one posting specifically calls out using the AI for art, art assets, which is like, you can be pro. I mean, honestly, you can be pro or against AI either way. But the thing is, like, they already made like a statement. They made a big stink about how, hey, we're not going to use it for art, and then now they're hiring somebody,
and then did
to use it for art.
Yeah,
I mean, it's Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah,
yeah. We should be surprised, but I'm not.
Yeah, no, you should never be surprised with anything they do. Like, they're an interesting thing. I mean, and the biggest surprise for me about it is just that they even remotely have anything to, like, would even go near AI, just because the only thing making them money right now for Hasbro is Wizards.
Yep.
Like, that's it. Like, Hasbro, other than Wizards. So to have Wizards do that, and they are pissing people off, because if you look like on Twitter and stuff like that, or X, whatever they call it now, Instagram, anywhere like that, like a lot of artists and stuff are like talking about starting boycotts and things like that. So I don't know, maybe Wizards was hoping no one would look at their job postings. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it. Like, so
it could be exploratory as well.
It could be exploratory. The way that I'm going to stand on this always, and this is just my personal opinion, this is not the opinion of Crossing the Nerdverse at large, etc., etc. But when it comes to AI and its application, I'm very much on the side of, like, AI should be doing my chores so that I can do my art, not doing my art so that I can do my chores. And when I look at the pay ranges for a lot of these, so you're talking about principal AI engineer and senior AI engineer, you're looking at pay ranges between $155,000 and $255,000 a year. And that sounds like a fantastic job until you start thinking about the fact that this AI is going to be doing the job, heavy air quotes around that, of a dozen artists, 24 artists a year. And so It seems like it's just they're trying to make it as cheap as possible because Hasbro.
Yeah, I also think that
it'll let the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think it's interesting that they also recently replaced their CEO. It was Cynthia Williams, and they replaced her with he was like John Haidt is his name. He was like a Sony exec at some point, and so it's like their main moneymaker is specifically like Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, and her big drive was like monetizing these things, and then they have now replaced her with somebody, and you would think that they would want somebody that has experience with these two things in particular, like these kind of game design things, at least like specifically card games, TCGs, or board games. But instead, it seems like they are just trying to double down on the can we monetize this in the digital, especially in the digital framework area.
Well, and I know that kind of plays into their models right now have been making me itch as somebody that is very much attached to tabletop games, and Dungeons and Dragons in particular. Looking at the changes they're wanting to make to the game, already I was kind of chomping at the bit that they're wanting to move from 5th edition to 1 D&D or whatever they're calling it. And I was like, I mean, edition changes happen. None of them last forever. That's fine. I'll keep my edition and we'll play with that, or whatever the stance you take is. And then I watched them get on, and either this month they're releasing or have released a full set of Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide that are updated rules to put you like halfway in between 5th edition and the next edition. And that just seems super cash grabby to me, where it's like, yes, we're going to make you buy all new books again next year, but in the meantime, please buy all new books. That'd be super cool.
Well, 1 D&D got shelved for what just came out. So they're not doing 1 D&D. Like, they just decided to update rules and spells and stuff like that. Yeah, they I don't know when they're going to do another edition, but the nice thing is you don't have to buy the new stuff unless you want the newest stuff. And I don't know.
Well, and
they're just weird.
I was very much of the opinion up until the wasteland that we do not speak of called 4th edition, that when edition updates came out, they were supposed to be improvements. So 3rd edition to 3.5. Okay, thought it was weird that you have a 3.5 edition, but the game significantly improved from 3rd edition to 3.5. Things got better. And I got it into my mind that's like, okay, when a new edition comes out, that's because the old edition rule set, they found a better way to do that. That's not the way this is going, because better is very, very relative. And the one thing I did notice about the newest stuff compared to 5th edition, and here's the kicker, I know Bones is going to cringe at this, there are fewer rules in the new edition. And for those of you that are aware of the D&D 5th edition 2014 Player's Handbook, having fewer rules is a tough thing to do because they barely have any rules in there to begin with.
I just always think of the editions as like a patch. Like, it might not be better. It's kind of like, World of Warcraft updating a patch. Here's my new way to play. Like, all of my characters get readjusted. All of my armor gets readjusted. There's like a level squish. That's how I've always looked at the editions. Not that I think they're going to get better. They're just like, hey, why don't you try playing this way? And then I go, no, thank you. And I scuttle back to my cave. But they give me the option.
Well, and the interesting thing about it is that you will find people in the camps in regards to, Dungeons and Dragons in particular, that they like what they grew up on, or they like what they have the most experience with, yada, yada, yada. I'm not in that camp. I grew up playing 3rd edition into 3.5 for many, many, many years. And that is by far the best edition of D&D that I've ever played. I still think 5th edition had real potential and addressed a lot of issues, and then wildly dropped the ball and couldn't stick the landing. And thinking of the edition releases as a patch is curious, but it's more like sequels. They're building on what came before. So Halo 2, Halo 3, etc., etc.
I mean, patches, they don't destroy the entire original base of the game. It's just, my Ret Paladin's Divine Storm is now reduced 20%. So therefore, my AoE damage isn't the same. So I might not build the same, or I might not run them in dungeons the same anymore. That's more like what I'm thinking of. It's just like, hey, here's a new way to try and play this game.
I think
I do like the new spells.
Yeah, I think both exist in the area of TTRPGs, sequels and patches, right? Because like 3 to 3.5 was definitely more of like a patch, or right now Pathfinder to Pathfinder, whatever they're called, remastered. It's definitely just like a patch. But like Starfinder to Starfinder 2 is pretty different. They're trying to make Starfinder 2 more like Pathfinder, rules wise. That would probably be more like a sequel,
Which
right?
I'm kind of happy about.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's cool that you could play a far future game in the same world that you previously played, like a fantasy setting. That's kind of cool.
Oh yeah. Well, and I do like the idea of like different ways that you can use it, and I think that that's going to be solid. Pathfinder is actually one that blew my mind because I'm definitely of a mindset right now, because the world is on fire, that anytime anybody tries to remarket something I already own, I just get very like cash grab. But that's not what Pathfinder did. They re-released their game because they overhauled that bitch from the ground up into a much better system. Yes, there's a lot of complexity to it that new players don't like, as I've come to find out. But the more I experiment with the game, honestly, the hardest part about Pathfinder 2 is unlearning D&D 5th edition. That's the hardest part. And because I run both. I run a Pathfinder game once a week, and I run a D&D game once a week. And D&D 5th is still great. I still love that game. It's got some glaring weaknesses, but it's still a game that me and my friends very much have fun with, which is kind of the whole point. And Pathfinder, I think, is a better game. I think the complexity really appeals to me, but it's very relative, right? But when I look at what happened to, let's say 3.5, which Bones, I agree with you 100%. That's definitely a patch, right? Because it's effectively 3rd edition with improvements, and a little bit of rebalancing. And then 4th edition, that wasn't even the same console. Like, that was just bad. The 4th edition is the mobile game of Dungeons and Dragons.
I never played 4th.
You didn't miss much.
5th edition, yeah, you didn't miss much, man. 4th had a few things they did right. They were all for players. Everything they did for the DM, no good. But they moved a lot of races into mainstream races. Most notably, things like Dragonborn and Tiefling. People love those races, they love to play those races, and they love to customize those races. In 3.5, playing a Tiefling was a pain in the ass. You had a level adjustment or a template system, and it was a whole problem. It got very complicated. 4th edition did that well. They then turned around and made gnomes monsters and not playable, which was funny and got quickly addressed. 5th edition came out, and the big push for 5th edition was that it felt like classic D&D. It felt like 3rd edition, but it was supposed to be easy to learn and very forward of the game, right? They want you playing low-level games, levels 1 to 6. They want you picking up the game very, very rapidly. That didn't land like they were hoping it would. And now I'm going to get back to talking about how everybody loved the one they grew up on. As a 3rd edition player, 2nd edition, 2-hit AC0 for all you Thaco fans out there was not user friendly. It was not beginner friendly, right? The way that math worked, and I've looked at the game all the way back to Chainmail, and Chainmail's rules were nuts because they were meant for a miniatures war game. And yeah, Thaco was a weird way to go about doing things. It was cool, and once you understood the system, it was fine, but you definitely had to understand the system.
Yeah. No, it wasn't easy to just jump in and play 2nd edition.
Yeah. Well, and like we talked about in a previous D&D episode, I still love reading the articles in Dragon Magazine about how enraged people were with the Dragonlance release, because how dare you bring role-playing into my RPGs? How dare you bring in the theater kids instead of us number crunchers? It's a combat simulator. Don't make it theater class. These bleeding heart poets out here trying to play stories. And the unfortunate truth is every edition is going to feel like that to someone, right? Somebody's going to be upset about everything. And it really breaks my heart to look at the company that owns all of those things, especially like Dungeons and Dragons, which is such a emergent, like it's not emergent, it's gotten a lot of attention in recent years. And so as somebody
COVID.
that played D&D back in 2003 when you were still a super nerd hiding out in a garage and all of the old ladies in town thought you were worshiping the devil, having the game be something so public and so publicly accepted and moving into a realm that it's so acceptable and easy to access for people, the fact that they're taking that and manipulating that new fame into turning it into this and using all this AI and over monetizing it is a shame. It's not to be unexpected, but it's a shame.
Question. Outside of the handbooks, what do you pay for to Wizards of the West Coast to play D&D?
The books. Now, especially
So
for third
just the
edition.
handbooks, right?
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
there's you only have to buy the books. It's the only thing you
Okay.
technically have to. There are all kinds of things, accessories, minis,
peripherals,
cards, like
you
item
can even
cards,
get
all kinds of stuff.
subscriptions to their digital service with D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
Okay, 'cause that's
is a
all I
whole
can
thing.
think of is like if books are really my only main source of revenue, yeah, you're getting a new edition from me every year. Like that
It's
to me
every
is
year.
yeah,
Now-
that's Call of Duty Modern Warfare, that's Call of Duty Black Ops. That's all that is to me. It's just in a paper format.
And it's
See, I
actually
think
better
that's
though
very fair.
because it's easier. Like you can literally play the game with one of each book.
Mhm.
Like everyone at the table doesn't even need to have the fucking book. So if you have a group that you always play with of like 4 or 5 people, you can all just literally pony together the money and buy like one player's handbook. It's
I don't
annoying
remember
to
my
share.
player's
No,
handbook
absolutely.
costing that much.
No, they are now.
Yeah, they're like
dude,
60
Okay.
bucks.
fucking
Yeah,
outrageous.
they're $70. Yeah, they're not great.
Yeah, they're outrageous. Like when I bought 3rd edition, I think it was only 20.
So
Shit, I
whenever
got a
I
way
got
more expensive bookshelf than I thought I did.
whenever I got my books, the average price was $40, and I could get them for a percentage discount used from Hastings. I miss you, Hastings. And oh, but yeah, it was funny. I wanted to turn my camera and show you, but it's not tenable right now. I still have all of my 3rd edition books. I have probably 60 volumes sitting on that shelf right there. I don't play 3rd edition. I haven't played 3rd edition in 10 years.
I remember hauling
still
that
have them
bag,
just in case, though.
around.
Yeah, dude, that giant bag. Whew. And so yeah, 5th edition, its player's handbook came out in 2014. The game's had a 10-year run, which is still makes me feel flippin'
On
ancient.
one book?
Yeah.
Yeah, on one book.
Okay, then you don't get to complain about a new book.
And so you're not wrong. I'm giving credit where it's due because you're right. If that's the primary monetization, you got a point because companies got to make some money. So fair enough. Now, of course, they haven't just released one book. They've released several books. But realistically, the only one you need is the player's handbook because most of the DM stuff is even in the player's handbook. You need that in a monster manual, and you're good to go.
But with that, yeah, that pretty much brings us to the end. The last thing I would like to say real quick is The Acolyte was a great show. I'm tired of reading that it wasn't great.
I finally finished it. I loved Acolyte. I thought it was great.
Now, I'll give everybody in the sense of its pacing, like certain episodes were kind of fucking slow, but you needed them to tie the whole series together. Anyways, so with that, we are still looking to do the card game. We'll get to it. I know I say it every week, but we'll get to it. Ryan has the stuff. He's back online now.
Right here, ready to go. I apologize to anybody that's been waiting for Survive. I know it's been on a crazy delay. My hometown is on fire, so I apologize. I will get to it.
All your fault, actually.
But we will get to that because it seems like an amazing party game.
It does.
I know Scented Realms. I think they just finished their Kickstarter because they started doing some more.
Fantastic.
And if everybody remembers, that's the scent way of playing the game, so you could smell goblins when your players walk in the cave and kind of immerse you more into it. I do.
So
I want to know what they got.
The best use of it, I kid you not, are the scents that you can release that are like wet cave, like wet stone, forest scents, where it's very pine, very like arboreal. It's going to be really cool. I actually got full faith in Scented Realms.
Oh yeah, no, it looks amazing. I have to eventually dive in and get myself some. But I have to find a local game first because I don't want to be buying people it and shipping it all over the world with people I play with. But that's just the people that we've worked with. Too Legit to Crit still doing they're doing more shows now.
Oh yeah, Too Legit solid.
Yeah, and we'll eventually we have plans to do another episode with them. And I think that's it. So just make sure everybody's following, subscribing. It's free to subscribe on any platform, be it Spotify, Apple, anything like that, and it just helps us out kind of with everything that's going on, so we can bring different types of content at some point.
Indeed, guys, and that is we do this because we have a love for the Nerdverse, and we want to share that with everybody, and we try to set it up as an easy gateway for somebody that wants to learn something else about the Nerdverse. And we really appreciate all the forms of support that you give us, whether you're going to our merch store or going to our link tree or any of that jazz. If you don't want to use your money, that's perfectly fine. Every time you listen to one of our videos or watch the view muted in the background, it really helps us out. And more than anything, more than your money, more than any of it, give us a like, give us a follow, give us some interaction, and that lets us know what you are wanting to hear. Any little comment, whether you agree with our stance on AI or the Stop Killing Games movement or anime news from this episode, let us know what you think, and that is the strongest way that you can possibly support us.
Yeah.
With that, we're going to go ahead
and
bring.
Why do you keep doing this? What is
We'll bring this episode to a close, guys.
What?
This has been a lot of fun. We covered 3 really interesting topics in the Nerdverse today, and I want to hear what you think about it. But until then, I'm Ryan. These are my amazing co-hosts, Eric, James, and Clark. We are Crossing the Nerdverse, and can't wait to catch you next time. See you guys.
You